Imagine living in a house made of glass. For your entire life, you live in this house and you never leave. And every day, people walk by and they watch you do your daily activities, and nobody ever comes in except for a strange creature that just brings you food and treats you when you're sick. So if you can imagine this, this is how zoo animals feel. So they're forced to live in these enclosures that are so small and they're not their natural habitat, and they have never have a chance to live in the wild. So today I'm going to be talking about how zoos should not be a place for animals to live in. So how many of you guys have ever been to a zoo? Okay, so you guys know what I'm talking about. I think that this is really important because hundreds of thousands of animals in just the United States alone are being denied their freedom by being kept in zoos. So the key points that I want to hit on in this speech are, I'm going to talk about elephants because I know that there's something that's very close to this class's heart. So I want to say how elephants are a really good example of an animal that doesn't really benefit from being kept in a zoo. I'm also going to hit on the educational benefits of zoos and how it shouldn't really be a valid justification for keeping animals in cages. And also, at the end, I'll tell you ways that you can help. So first is elephants. Being kept in zoos causes many, many problems for these animals. So the article, Do Elephants Belong in Zoos? By Jeffrey Kahn, it was published in the journal Bioscience in 2006, and it states that elephants in captivity usually die at about age 40, while those who live in the wild typically live to age 70. So this is a 30-year difference, and being kept in captivity obviously has an effect on them. Another thing is that zoos aren't usually in elephants' natural habitats. So if you think of, say, the Bronx Zoo, elephants don't live in an area like New York. They live in Africa or Asia, which is typically a lot hotter. So when it gets cold during the winter, they stay in indoor facilities. So these facilities usually have concrete floors, and they cause a lot of foot infections for the elephants. So this could become a really big concern for them. And early in 2006, one of the elephants at the Smithsonian National Zoo in Washington, D.C. had to be put down because of its foot infection. Another thing that zoos do to elephants is that they're not able to keep in the same kinship groups because a lot of zoos don't have enough space to house more than a certain amount of elephants. So a baby elephant is usually separated from its mother and sent to another zoo, just because as they grow up, they don't have the amount of room that this elephant will need. And also, adult male elephants are really hard for zoos to keep because they're very large and aggressive. So that's not really something you want to be liable for if anything were to go wrong. So if you're splitting up these groups, it's just not a natural environment for these animals to live in. Say that there's only females or only a certain age group. They're not going to be able to interact with other elephants like they would in the wild. Zoos also don't offer enough space for these animals to live. So it's easy to assume that no animal in captivity will ever have the freedom that animals in the wild do. But if you look at the amount of space that a zoo is required to have for each elephant, it's really kind of startling. So the American Zoo Association standard for elephant enclosures is only 1,800 square feet for one, and then each additional elephant is 900 more square feet. And that's not a lot of room at all, considering animals in the wild could just go wherever they want. So one popular argument that people have for zoos is that it has an educational benefit. And by seeing these animals up close, people are going to be able to identify with them more, and they're going to be more wanting to help them. So I don't really believe that this is a valid argument, and a lot of people agree with me in my research. Keeping an animal in a zoo, it's kind of doing the exact opposite. So you're saying that we should keep these animals free and we should help them, but you're caging them up. It's just kind of like denying them their basic rights. And it's just not really giving the public the right idea. There's probably a lot more ways that you can educate them by reading books or seeing movies or going to see them in their natural habitat would help people be educated about them, but not keep them caged up. So how can these problems be solved? Ross Clubb of the University of Oxford in England published an article in the magazine Nature that suggests that zoos could stop housing wild rage carnivores and concentrate instead on species that respond better to being kept in captivities. There are many animals that do well in zoos. Elephants are not one of them, and a lot of big creatures like that aren't, just because of their space that they need and the habitat that they live in. But there are some animals that do very well, and some are the ring-tailed lemur and snow leopards, and a lot of people say turtles do really well in captivity. So one way that zoos could change is that instead of using their resources on animals that aren't, like, it's not really benefiting them much, they could use this money instead to help animals like these, that so they could protect them and make their population grow more. It would just be a better use of their money and time. Another way could be using the money that would go to zoos and use it for animal sanctuaries instead. So an animal sanctuary is much larger than a zoo and usually specializes on one animal or a few. So a large quantity of the animals can be kept there, and they can interact with each other like they would in the wild, and they wouldn't be limited to just a few of their species. They also have a large area for the animals to roam, and it's usually outside and in an environment that is more similar to theirs. So they won't be completely caged in, and it'll be similar to being in the wild. Another benefit of animal sanctuaries is that the keepers are only working with a small group of animals or species, so they're going to have a lot of specialized knowledge on the animal's needs, so they can help them a lot better. And something that's very important about sanctuaries is that a true sanctuary doesn't buy, sell, or breed animals, but they take in unwanted exotic pets, surplus animals from zoos, or injured wildlife that can no longer survive in the wild. So they're not just going to Africa or Asia and being like, I want that elephant, let's bring it back to the sanctuary. They're getting animals like, say, people that own exotic pets like lions and tigers, and they grow up to be so big that they can't take care of them. They take those in and give them a life that they could live. So your call to action can be, don't go to zoos. Your attendance at a zoo, every time you go, you're giving them money, and they're using that money to support these inhumane acts. And it's just keeping it going and going and going. So if you don't go, their attendance is going to go down, and they're going to realize that there's something wrong and that they shouldn't be doing this with the animals. And you could also support animal rights groups such as PETA, which is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, which is PETA.org. So in conclusion, zoos should not be a place to keep wild animals. Next time you're thinking about going to the zoo, think about the actions that your money will support. All animals should be able to live free and experience the real world, not a fake one for the entertainment of